Author's House.
Hi everyone, today is November 24th, 2021. My name is Nicole Richardson, and I'm gathered here today with Rita Emery, the author of Wildfire, Woodpecker's Amazing Adventure. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Rita?
A little bit about myself?
Mm-hmm. Wow. And a little bit about your book, too.
Well, I spent 30 years in the education field, and then I retired, and now I'm working for the Suisun Wildlife Center and for the seniors here in Suisun. And at the Wildlife Center, there's just many things there I can do, and the book got started because I was teaching in an after-school program with students in elementary school, and they were writing little books for themselves, and that's how this all got started. Never dreamed I'd be an author, a published author, or anything. That was like way down the road somewhere, I guess.
That actually kind of answers one of the questions that I was going to ask you. As a child, did you know you wanted to be a writer? And you kind of said
Nope.
No. So what started your journey as a writer, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I think one of the things is when I was a coach, at the end of the season, I would write poems about the year with the teams and how they did, and wrote stories about each of the students. But the story, how I got into writing is when I started teaching at an after-school program here in Dockerville. I had two jobs. One was to write with the kids, and number two was to present activities for the kids to do. And one day I had a group of very, very highly intelligent 4 or 5 fifth, sixth grader girls, and I had asked them, what do you girls plan to write about? And there was kind of this lull there, and so one of the girls popped out and said, well, if you write, we will write. So what are you going to write about? Well, that caught me off guard. And so I just said, well, I'll write about something I do at the Wildlife Center. So how's that sound? Oh, and they thought that was very interesting. And they told me what they all were going to write. And basically, they were all fictitious writers. And that's how this all got started. Was I started writing about a woodpecker that we received from a wildfire, and how it was being taken care of. And I thought, well, I kept adding to the book and writing the book. And after I got quit, after I no longer was teaching that class, I just kept little notes about what they did at the Wildlife Center with this bird, and one thing led to the next, and now look what I have. I have a published book about a wildlife adventure of a bird in a wildfire, and that's how this all came about.
Wow, that's actually really cool that your writing journey started with a bunch of toddlers telling you, I'm not doing it unless you do it.
Right, but like I said...
It's adorable.
Since when did the students tell the teacher what to do? But when I look back upon it, I said to myself, you know what? This has been very interesting and very rewarding, because here the students pushed you to do something when I pushed them to do something too. So it was like an equal chance for each of us to do something worthwhile.
Yeah, it kind of seems like they taught you more than you expected.
Yeah, you're probably right. Like I said, I never had any aspirations to be a writer or an author or anything like that. And like I said, one thing led to the next, and I just kept doing this. And then in the meantime, after I no longer was teaching writing to the students, I joined a writing club for here that this lady had for us. She's a well-known author herself. She wrote a book about her experiences as an Air Force wife, and she taught a writing class. And I thought, well, I'll take that and see what else leads to this. So I kept doing that, and each week we had to bring something to the class. So I would bring a page or two that I had written about, and everybody's going, boy, keep doing that because this is getting to be interesting. And I said, well, it's a true story, and this is how it just kept going and going and going till what you have now is a product of this. It took me, I would say, 5 or 6 years to do this.
So, is this the first story you've ever written?
Story, yes. Basically, I just usually write poetry. I never wrote a story.
Okay.
I used to write stories, as students you write stories in class, and mine were always about sports, but nothing like this. Nothing.
Okay.
I mean,
yeah, when I wrote my first story, I was 11 years old, and it was a story about a vampire murder mystery. So that's my writing story and how I began.
well, and I noticed a lot of the students, when I taught, they were very good at this nonfiction scientific stuff. I don't know where they get their imaginations, but I was just when I would read them, just to proofread them, I was just amazed at the level of some of these kids and how they write. And it's just too bad they don't. This is one thing that burned me about education. They don't let these kids write more in school and to do things like that. And this after-school program really opened a lot of doors for the kids, and it even opened a door for their instructor. I never had opportunities like this when I was in school or anything like that.
Yeah, it's always a good feeling to give somebody an opportunity you never had. It's a heartwarming type feeling, you know?
Well, yes, because when I look back and at all of this, I keep every night, I say to myself, thanks for those 4 or 5 girls. And I just wish now I had kept the roll sheet of those 4 young ladies, because they're the ones that pushed me to do it. And then we had the instructors that were teaching this writing class. The 3 ladies that taught this class were all published authors, well recognized in the black community for their writings of the black people, and they've won honors and things like this. And they were so helpful. I mean, this whole process was very helpful. And I keep looking back and saying, whoever thought I'd be doing this?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a, not quite sure what the word is, but like an eye-opener, like, wow, never thought this would happen.
Right. So, and I've been asked, am I going to write again? And I said, well, if I do, it'll be about my possums that I work with at the Wildlife Center. But this has been, it takes so long for you to do something like this. But you read about people who can write something out in 5 minutes and turn it in and get an A+ on it. Well, that's not me. So, very interesting journey.
Yeah, very much so. What would you say is your biggest source of inspiration?
For doing this?
For writing in general.
I would take it back to those 4 or 5 young ladies that told me, what are you going to write about?
Yeah, I kind of had a feeling that was going to be your answer by the way you speak about these ladies. And I think it's really cool that something... Continue?
And I also feel that the 3 the 3 authors that taught our writing class also had something to do with it too, because they kept pushing me, give a little more detail, be a little more explicit, do this, be realistic, and they were very good. Because when it came to making a title for the book, that took us quite a few sessions to do. And we kept doing it by single eliminations. No, I don't like that. Oh, that sounds pretty good. Well, how would you do this? And that's how that all came. I would also give them the credit too.
That's pretty neat. What would you say was your favorite part about writing this book?
I think my favorite part is I was able to show, because I learned this from when we do educational programs with our animals at the Wildlife Center. The kids would have questions about how do you take care of them and so forth. And I said to myself, oh, write this about so they can see there's a relationship between how we get treated and they get treated, and it's the same thing. When they go to the doctor, they have to have their temperature taken and all this. It's the same thing with the critters. When they come in, they're put on the surgical table and looked at and diagnosed just like we are. And I think that's the main thing, the main reason I wrote the book, to show, and to show also, even though there is a wildfire, how it affects the wildlife out there.
Okay. I think I might have mentioned this question already, so feel free to disregard it if I already mentioned it. But what is the main message you want to get across to your readers?
I think the main purpose would be, the whole thing is what you do to, how can I say this? When there is a fire, and I don't care if it's in your home or in the wild, it affects everybody. It affects people, it affects wildlife, it affects your animals, it affects your pets, and so forth. There's always a consequence when there's a wildfire.
Yeah, you're right, because wildfire affects everything. Even if it doesn't touch anything, like any buildings or anything, the air quality could really hurt somebody.
Right. And that's also mentioned in the story, when this woodpecker wakes up that morning and peeks out of his hole where he's hibernating in this tree, he realizes that something is wrong because the air doesn't smell right, and I'm gagging and all this blah blah. And that's the same thing that happens when we have these wildfires, and you get inundated with the smoke and things. You know, it's bad air day.
Oh yeah. Those were always terrible when I was going to school and sports would be canceled because of the air.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
Would you say this book is a standalone, or do you think you're going to add on to it as a series?
No. I'm just going to leave it alone as is. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, if I do decide to write another book, I will write it about the possums that I've trained to be educational ambassadors for the Susan Wildlife Center. And that's where they go out and we're able to, we talk about these critters, and because when you look at it, how many people actually see a hawk or a possum or snakes and so forth? A lot of people don't. They don't see that. And when you show it to them, it's like, we have this, we have that. And I remember when I first started at the Wildlife Center, when I was training the possums, you'll laugh at this, but people would come by and they would say, I'd shoot that thing. Well, here I am, 8 years later, they're no longer saying that because they can't believe how you can take one possum, and we have to be very careful on how we select these possums and how you train them. They can actually be just like your pet cat, sit on your lap and just sit there.
That's pretty cool. I've actually heard that possums, they kind of make themselves seem dirtier than they really are.
Yeah, that's a very true statement. Very true statement.
Yeah, because I hear people say like, "Oh, don't touch that thing. Don't get near it. It has rabies." But I actually don't think possums just carry rabies like that unless it's given to them, right?
No. Possum is the only animal that will not transmit rabies because it can't get rabies because it has a low metabolism rate.
That is very cool.
Yeah, they only live 3 years because they continue to grow and grow and grow. They, like the rest of the wildlife, you have growth spurts just like you do in human beings. Well, that's not true with a possum. A possum, from the day they're born till the day they die, they constantly grow and grow, and one day their heart just says no more, and that's it.
Huh. Learn something new every day because I did not know that.
Yes. And a possum can be very good for your garden because they will eat the ants.
All the critters.
and the mosquitoes and the snails and so forth. But see, they had a bad name, at least when I first started. And like now, they can't believe how this animal will sit on my lap and just sit there and not be fazed by them walking by or anything.
Yeah, I kind of feel like possums have a better name now because a lot of, or at least I noticed that some people who are from like my generation, they relate to possums because people will pick on them because they seem dirty or they seem weird or something like that, and they're not. And people don't give them a chance to really get to know them. And so I noticed that a lot of people around my age kind of resonate with a possum because of that.
Well, and you talk from people, I've talked to people who are from the South, and they live where they say they used to eat possums. They tell me stories about how their grandma used to boil them up, and they would eat. And I'm going, you did what? But it's very interesting to listen to people who really lived around possums, and that was a source of their food. They are very interesting to listen to that. And now to see, and now when they see this possum sitting on my lap like a little cat, they're just going, I can't believe it. My grandma used to cook those up for breakfast or something like that. And you're kind of going, what?
Yeah, I think I would have the same reaction. Just that, you did what now?
Yes.
So who would you say is your target audience for this book?
Kids in the grades of, I would say, second and up. And if a teacher reads the book, because when I was doing this, as I was going along doing this, I would go to a couple of the schools that I had taught at and ask them if I could read the book to the kids. And they were very interested. And I'm talking about first, second, and third graders I would read it to, and they were very interested in. In fact, they used to say, I'll never forget this one little kid said, you take animals to the doctor? And I said, well, do you have a pet at home? No. See, they don't see that relationship that you can take things to the pets and wildlife and things to the doctor to make them better. And that, I found that very interesting. And then when I started adding my pictures, or I got an illustrator and she started adding pictures to the story, the kids were going, wow. And she made the pictures, and one of the comments I received was, those pictures are so realistic. In fact, the publishing company that published my book couldn't believe how realistic the pictures were looking.
Yeah, the pictures are beautiful.
Pardon me?
The illustrator, I don't know who you're illustrating colorful aspects to it. It kind of matches. I feel like the Pat Reed? Oh, okay, I see it.
Pat Reed,
I see it. Her name.
Yeah. She used to be an illustrator for the Jelly Belly, and she's done a lot of illustrations for other people, either for their books or for maybe a store sign or something like that. And she was mentioned to me by my colleague that I worked for when I was teaching the after-school program. And that's how I became in contact with her. And I asked her, would you like to do this? And I showed her the book and so forth. And she said, oh, I would love to do this. And that's what and I get more comments about how realistic they are. They're so realistic.
Yeah. I feel like her art style really matches your writing style.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. But you should tell Pat that I said that too.
Okay. And what did you say your name was?
My name is Nicole.
Oh, okay. Yeah, unfortunately, she finally got to move to Oregon.
I just have a couple more questions for you before we wrap this up.
Okay.
What does your family think about your writing?
To be honest with you, they, oh, no big deal. That was their remark. My parents are both deceased, so, and that's too bad because I would love to have them seen it. But my brothers and sisters, it was just like, oh, okay. That was their whole thing.
Well, I mean, it's better than a negative reaction, right?
Right. In fact, my younger sister, she took her book and went back to her adopted son's school, and they put it in the children's library there, and I felt very proud about that.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yes, I felt very proud about that. I thought that really meant something, and I thanked her for doing that. I don't know what else she would have done with it, but that's what she did. She took it back and asked to have, in honor of her adopted son and me, to put the book in the children's library, and they did. No problems, no questions, or anything.
Yeah, I can understand why they would be impressed, because it's just impressive, especially considering you said this is your debut novel. I would not have, just reading through this book, I wouldn't have known this was your first book.
Yep.
What would you say was the hardest part of writing this book?
Putting it all together.
Yeah.
And finding an illustrator that I wanted, because I didn't want cartoons for my pictures.
Yeah, I can understand how finding the right artist for your writing would be a hard part. But I noticed that the most common answer to my question, what was the hardest part, people always say either actually writing it or compiling all the notes into coherent thoughts.
I agree with the last thought you said, because like I said, I always kept notes on what the medical director did, and then I would, when I sat down, I'd lay them all out on the floor and, okay, how do I put this in order? Where do I put it? And then I was fortunate enough to write it up and then go back to my writing club or class that I was in and read it to them and ask them, now, is this is this coherent? Is this following pace step by step by step? And that was an excellent way too.
I think I just got like 3 more questions for you. What does literary success look like to you?
Good question. I think for me it would mean I was able to publish the book and have people interested in it. And that, and that even started before I even got it published. Through my writing class that I took, they were very interested in seeing how this will end, and that the ending is a happy ending. It's not a failure or something like that. Because 2 of the woodpeckers that came in, one survived and one was deceased, ended up dying.
I am a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. So, everything happens for a reason. Where can readers find out more about you and your book?
All I know right now, it's on Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
Okay. And how do you feel about working with Authors Press?
I'll put it simply, she blew me off the wall. One day she calls me up and she's explaining all this to me, and I'm just going, oh, this is a nightmare. I can't believe I'm not awake this morning, so, okay. I mean, she literally blew me off the wall. Because I never dreamed of anything ever happening like this to me and to my book, especially the book.
Yeah, I feel like it's always like a not an aha moment, but like a oh my goodness moment. You know what I mean?
Well, it wasn't an oh my goodness moment to me. It was just off the wall. I mean, I'm just going, it's all I could do is not tell her, well, you repeat that. Will you say that again? Will you say that again? Will you say that again? I can't believe what you're saying.
I think that's all the questions I have for you today, Rita. Thank you so much for meeting with me.
Oh, that's fine. I appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
No worries. Was there anything you wanted to mention or discuss before I end the meeting?
No, like I said, this whole process is still, to me, off the wall. I just find it so unbelievable this is happening. I keep pinching myself to say this is just all a dream.
It's not a dream. I'm really interviewing you.
I know. It's the same thing when Miss Davis calls me. I'm going, I don't know, she's calling me again. I guess this can't be a dream.
Well, if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to Authors Press either through our number or via our email. But that's all I have for you today. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Okay. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
No worries. If you ever write another book, come back to us and see if you can do another interview.
Oh, okay.
Have a wonderful day and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.